Hello, and in this video I would like to talk about the 50mm lens, prime lens that is, and why you should have them in your camera bag or pretty much wherever you go and take pictures, because I also always take my 50mm with me wherever I go and take pictures, and that pretty much leads me into my first reason why you should have them, which is the 50mm focal length. Sure, some people might not like it, and some people like it. Well, a lot of people that I know, they like it. And this is because 50mm, it doesn't have a lot of, it doesn't compress the background too much, but if you're taking pictures, let's say if you have a subject in the frame or in your image, 50mm focal length, even though it helps you to focus on your subject more, but it also still helps you to tell the story behind it. So where you and your object or your subject might be, or whatever story you want to tell, the 50mm lens is not too wide and not too zoomed in, so it helps you to just focus enough on the subject that you still can tell the story. And the second reason is the quality of 50mm lenses nowadays. Even the f1.8, sure, it's not the most professional quality you can get, but it is sharp enough that you can do professional work with it. Even the 1.8 versions, the cheaper 1.8 version. Because I'm a Canon user, I got the 1.8 STM, so it's one of the cheapest 50mm Canon produces, but it's great. And it's also pretty good for video. It's not only for photography, so for video, because it has roughly the same focal length as your eye sees, so it also helps you to tell the story. Hopefully you know how to take video or pictures in the right angle. Then it can really tell the story. And you can also pretty much throw it into your bag. Now it's the third reason. It's you can pretty much throw it into your bag because of the small size of especially the 1.8 and the 1.4 versions from Canon. At least the 1.4 version isn't that much bigger. It's roughly the same size, maybe a few grams more heavy, but yeah, you still can throw it into your bag. And usually if I would go out, my normal setup would be my 5D Mark III with my 16-35, so a full frame and an ultra wide angle. But if I don't want to take my 24-70 with me, I would just take my 50mm. Sure, it doesn't really replaces the 24-70, but it does give me the option to go more zoomed in. And if I'm taking my 16-35, it already covers my favorite focal length anyway, which is the ultra wide end, so I don't really need the 24-50 part, and I don't really need the 50-70 part. So having the 50 is probably enough for me to actually zoom in and maybe shoot portraits with, or shoot other subjects, or if I'm trying to tell certain stories at certain events. Then this lens is a pretty good lens. So it's actually traveling light as well, because this lens is quite light, and by having my main lens in the main camera and just another light lens that I don't even feel the weight of it in my bag is pretty good, I find. And the image quality, as I said, is pretty decent, so it's also a pretty nice travel lens to have. And on a crop frame, it will work out as roughly an 80mm, so it will also be nice to have it to take portrait with. And, with that f1.8, or if you have the f1.4, or even f1.2, which is pretty heavy, then, you can really, replace the 85mm for crop frame, I think, because, I don't know, it's, roughly 80-85mm lens focal length equivalent lenses. It's pretty, I think it's a sweet spot for portrait, but also 50mm is also another sweet spot for portrait in a lot of cases. Not all lenses applies to all cases, obviously, but for a lot of cases it does give you that nice portrait to work with. And so not only if I'm just going out casually to take pictures, but also let's say if I have to photograph places that I'm traveling. Let's say if I'm going to a different city in Germany during Christmas and there's Christmas market, sorry, and after capturing pretty much the entire market, I can just kind of take this lens and then go into detail, maybe take pictures of the shopkeepers and the activities. So whatever the shopkeeper is doing, maybe he or she is selling things, I can pretty much photograph the shopkeeper and what he or she is doing in the shop. It's kind of telling that story, like, okay, maybe it's in Berlin and it's a Christmas market, and you know, I'm still like telling the story rather than just taking a simple portrait of the shopkeeper or of the product that's being like offered at the market. So it's still nice to tell that little story with this lens. Now another reason is also the price tag, especially for the f1.8 versions. The f1.8 versions, it's pretty decent. I mean, it's pretty cheap, I think, for like, depending on where you buy the lenses actually. So in most cases it's roughly around 100 euros. I got mine for roughly 100 euros. Well, I had to buy the hood extra, and so that add up to maybe 120 euros, but you can also get like third-party hoods, so for like 5 euros, so you save that extra money. So at the end you could be spending like, I don't know, between 100 to 130 euros, depending on where you live and when you actually buy it. So maybe Christmas there might be some sort of cashback system that you could get even 20 euros cashback of these 50mm lenses. So you can get it even lower than 100 euros roughly. So I think it's a pretty good deal to get this kind of lens, simply because of that f1.8 or even lower depending on what your preference is. Now I have to say that 50mm focal length is not my favorite focal length. My favorite focal length for prime is actually 85, but you know, the past few years I kind of like, it's still not my favorite focal length, but I pretty much say to myself like, it's a nice all-around lens if I don't really need my favorite focal length lens to work with, which is the 16-35. So there will be time when I need to actually get close to things and take pictures in a different perspective, and it's pretty much like the second lens I go to now. I mean, before it used to be like my 16-35 and then 24-70, but now it's like my most used lenses are the 16-35, then my 50 1.8, and then my 85 1.2. 24-70 comes in at last, so before my 24-70 would be my 70-200. So 24-70 became like that lens where it's a pretty nice lens to use, but, well, I'm using it to film this video right now actually, but it's a lens that I would consider the least to take it with me, simply because I have a faster glass now. I mean, sure, it's not as sharp as my 24-70 because that's an L lens, and the coating on there is also better. And talking about the coating, nowadays more like the modern 50mm lenses, the cheaper modern 50mm lenses, the coating on there is also nice. So you can be sure that you're getting pretty nice images. So the flaring doesn't happen as strong or as distracting as the older lenses where the coating on the actual elements, well, the older cheaper lenses where the coating on the actual glass elements isn't that good up to today's standards pretty much, and the flare could be pretty harsh, and there might be even more color fringing, whereas this lens, the color fringing is still visible but not distracting visible, and the color fringing is like very minimal, enough that you can pretty much correct it in post anyway. So, you know, just go for the more modern 50mm cheap lenses if you want to give it a try, which I do highly recommend you give it a try. And the next reason would be because it's 50mm, it's a prime lens. It's not like a zoom lens, like a 16 to 35, 200 to 70, 70 to 200, so on and so forth. That means you learn more, especially for beginners to amateur photographers. You learn more, like how to control your depth of field, how to control what should be in your frame. You know, like in photography, there's a huge difference between you zooming into the object and you actually walk, like you use your legs or however you want to move to actually control like how zoomed in you want it to be, the frame. But in the same time, you also learn about the compression of the background. So, you know, without having the luxury of zooming in and out, you also learn, like, you know, if you get closer to the object, it might tell the story in a different way than if you just simply just zoom in. Sure, you know, there's a bit of action to actually get closer or walk further away from the object, but you know, it's well worth it because it will help you to be more creative in the storytelling part of your photography or your filmmaking, or whatever you're doing with a 50mm lens. You know, just getting that extra step closer might also make that huge difference to your storytelling in your final result. So I really do recommend using prime lens. It doesn't actually need to be a 50mm, it can be an 85, 35, 24, what have you. It really depends on your preference, but prime lenses in general really will help you to tell a better story. And even if you go back to using the zoom lenses afterwards, you will also be able to use the knowledge you gain from the storytelling and how you can compress the background from using prime lenses and apply it to the zoom lenses. And, you know, it's just something that you also really have to learn. Photography is not only about click, 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 and then share it on social network. It's also like how you communicate with photography or even filmmaking, how you communicate it out, how you share that specific moment, how you tell the story, or even if you only care about the visual part, how you want it to look good, like what is your standard of good. It will also like help to rise the standards of your photography skills a bit on what is a good picture for you in your own signature way, like your own photography style, rather than just a picture of, let's say, a subject with some sort of random background, but you don't know why or why you would use that focal length. You know, you kind of have to know how to tell a bit of story or how to make the picture look visually good as well without too distracting too much for the eyes of the audience, or even yourself, that is. And if you're using a crop sensor DSLR or crop sensor camera, let's say mirrorless or something, maybe it's also worth giving a try, like looking for wider focal length, but it's also an equivalent to 50mm or close enough, to see that whether or not you like it, because prime lenses at roughly this focal length or equivalent, they're pretty affordable, so do give it a try. And I mean, there will definitely be a lot of situations where you will be able to apply this focal length to benefit your pictures, your outcome. Yeah, and that was just pretty much a short video of reasons why I think you should have a 50mm lens in your, well, part of your kit, or pretty much take it almost everywhere you go if you're going to take pictures. Yeah, I hope this video kind of helps you somewhat in some ways. I mean, you can pretty much apply 50mm lenses in a lot of situations, say wedding, travel, event, even shooting videos like music videos or promotional videos, commercial videos, things like that, because it's such a common focal length, even though it's common, but it's a focal length that you still can get creative with, so that's a special part. So, you know, it's, despite being the focal length that a lot of people like to use, but there will always be special opportunities to find special angle, perspective, and ways you can tell story with this focal length. Yeah, and I would just like to leave it at that, and thank you very much for watching to this far of the video. I hope this video kind of helped you somewhat, and I'm sorry for my very bad English. It's not my native language, but I'm still doing my best. Anyway, have fun shooting and have a nice day. Bye.